And he said, "It's funny how you decide what a good game is." And I was like, "Fuck me for?" But I wanted to be like, "All right, then why is it a bad game? Tell me why it's a bad game." But the microphone's already gone, and then now
Ty's
I'm a
just
clown.
jumping over all these like stage chairs. He's trying to
Right.
get past channel 7, channel 25 cameras, just going back up there.
I know, but like it makes me feel like I'm in the White House. Like, sir.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 184, presented by CLNS Media and sponsored by our good friends over at FanDuel and Factor Meals. My name is Conor Ryan. Today we are once again joined by the esteemed Ty Anderson of 98.5 The Sports Hub. Ty, what's going on?
Just steamed, not esteemed, just regular steamed.
Steamed. Oscar Steen or?
I was thinking more like steamed ham. I don't know,
Oh.
but yeah, but no, we'll go with Oscar Steen. That seems cool. Small. He's got Quadzilla.
Yeah, a winning contributor to a good hockey team, right? I feel like that. I mean, I wouldn't say a contributor though. I mean, I feel like it's not doing you service there. I mean, you're kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
I'm trying to blow up your spot, but
yeah, no, I am never ever gonna be a big deal. It's like a thing I refuse to. Like people will like this like in this industry, and you see people and they're really nice to you and they're really complimentary. I don't know how to take a compliment. I'm just like, when someone says I followed you on Twitter, my first reaction is always, sorry. Like, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry you do that. That seems like a bad idea. I appreciate it, but I don't know what to say.
It's one of those things where I think we're very flattered when we have that, and it does mean a great deal to us. And I'm like, you know how many Nick Ritchie Moon fucking tweets you've probably seen? I'm like, I'm sorry I populated your timeline with that. But
yeah, Nick Ritchie, my guy, by the way. I haven't looked at a stat line in a little bit here, but he signed in Finland.
Yes.
When I looked, he had played 3 games in Finland. 0 goals, 0 assists, -5, 29 minutes and penalties. That's my guy. That is my guy. Just an absolute monster. I miss him every day. Miss the moon.
Absolutely, yes. It's not a great start for Nick Ritchie over in Finland, but by the same token, Bruins not doing very well in their last game against the Buffalo Sabres. Bruins have been on a roll as of late, mostly fueled by Brad Marchand going sicko mode, as the kids say. Comes to an end, though, against Buffalo on Thursday. Lose 3-1. Based on the way that game was going, didn't really seem like it was even that close. I unfortunately was not present. I was watching the revitalized Patriots defeat the juggernaut that are the Pittsburgh Steelers, so I was not there. Ty, you were. When you look at that game and the way the Bruins lost, and maybe looking more from a big picture perspective, are you more concerned by kind of the drop in offensive production from this team, or is it still kind of what we talked about the last couple of weeks, where it's more the defensive side of things and a few lapses there that are maybe a little bit more concerning at this stage of the season?
Yeah, I think the defense, you could work around that. The offense, I don't know if you could inject more skill and speed into a group that is a little bit, lacking in that department. And I think you kind of noticed it last night. And we'll talk about this more, but, they sit Matthew Poitras, and you really kind of see that they don't really have a lot of guys that can create their own spark. They have David Pastrnak and they have Brad Marchand and they have some high-end talent, as we obviously know. But once you get beyond them, you're kind of relying on guys who really rely on a bounce going their way versus creating their own bounces, right? And that's a little bit of a difference of a team. Like you look at some of the guys that started off hot and the way they've cooled down. JVR has, I think, 2 goals in his last 14 games, I want to say. Morgan Geekie, you still haven't seen the offensive impact as much, if it is there. And so you have some guys that, are just so hot and cold that, and you don't know if they can tap into that level like consistently because they don't have the speed or in some cases the skill. So defense, you can coach. Offense, you can't teach a plumber to be an artist overnight, and that's kind of the issue I think you may have with the Bruins once you get towards the bottom of their roster up front for sure.
Yeah, that's why I almost think the defense is more concerning, but it's also like the more fixable option. It's like, I think going into the year, we expected this was going to be a little bit of a slog offensively in terms of, all right, you do have the Pasternaks, the Marchands, what have you, that are going to kind of have to be your, more or less your cheat code on most nights in terms of generating offense for you. But when you come on out of an offseason where you lose, what was it? I think 80 total goals, 210 total points. It was to be expected you were going to take a step back in that regard. The defense, the rush defense, the struggles with checking, I think those are things that are more like, listen, like we knew the bread and butter of this team was going to be, which is when the goaltending and defense. Having those lapses when you have that personnel out there on your blue line and on your overall defensive structure, I feel like that's kind of more concerning in terms of like, that's not right? Like, I feel like the offense, we knew going into this year that it wasn't going to be an ideal situation. Again, it's even, I think, probably been better than most of us have expected. Like, we knew what Pastrnak was going to do. We knew more or less what Marchand was going to do. Coyle and Zacha have still been very productive in their top 6 spots. You've had contributions early on from guys like JVR, but I don't think anyone was expecting this team to be top 10, top 5 in offense going into this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And you know, we're kind of looking at what these guys have done the last calendar month, right? You know, Charlie Coyle has 7 goals in 13 games. Well, 3 of them came in one game, right? So that's, you know, this is a chicken shit way of looking at it, I know. But so that's really 4 goals in 12 games. You know, you're looking at Trent Frederick. He had a 2-goal game in there, I'm pretty sure. He has 4 goals in 13 games. So, okay, that's 2 in 12. Like, it's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit misleading, I think. You look at their numbers right now. Do you know who has the 5th most goals or the 6th most goals on the team or in the last calendar month, if you had to guess?
Just Johnny Beecher?
It's Johnny Beecher with 3 goals and 0 assists. He's outscoring. He has as many goals as Jake DeBrusk. He's outscoring JVR. He's outscoring Matthew Poitras. He has the same amount of goals as Danton Heinen. That's your 4th line center. And so you can be happy about the production that you're getting from Johnny Beecher, which I am. But you look at the other part of the roster and you're like, you need a little bit more juice here, you know, like a little bit more scoring oomph, you know, every night, because it can't be David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand every single night. Like that's just not sustainable for this team.
Absolutely. And when you look at the rest of that game against the Sabres, a big letdown game for Boston against a Buffalo team that people thought was going to be really good, really haven't been all year.
I'm out on them forever. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm out on them forever. They are officially in that. I'll believe it when you get to the playoffs. When you clinch the spot, that's when I'm going to believe in you. I've been burnt so many times. I've heard the bullshit so many times from people, and they stink. They still stink. Every year they stink. I'm so sick of hearing it. So sorry, that's my little Buffalo tangent for you.
No, that's warranted. And it's also very funny how Buffalo every year too finds a new way to like let down and hurt their own expectations. Like we've had multiple years of like during the Eichel tenure where they were a playoff team going into Thanksgiving. They looked like they were really building something. They plummet. This year's like even worse because you thought this year was all going to come together. Maybe not be a top team in the Atlantic, but you look at just the personnel in place, the skill, the talent on defense in net. The fact that it hasn't worked now, it's like I don't really know what to make of it. And 2, I think it once again reinforces for Bruins fans who maybe a year or 2 ago thought this team needed to fully blow things up and rebuild. And, you know, I don't think people thought they were going to realistically fall into a Bedard sweepstakes or anything like that. But people who thought they needed to clear house, start anew, all right, Bergeron and Krejci are gone, let's, you know, rip the foundations up. This is what you get. Even when a team like consistently lands top picks, top talent, it's not to say there also have been like busts. Like I think Dahlin's a very good player. Like Levi has talent. Like you stumble into like Tage Thompson, which that trade looked terrible for them, and now he's all of a sudden like morphed himself into like a more dynamic Rick Nash. Like they have talent. They've hit on these different guys, and it still doesn't work out. It shows you just how much, especially in hockey, how much of a fucking crapshoot it is. So when you have a good talent, a good core in place, and you can add to it, and you have guys like McAvoy and Pastrnak and Swayman and Allmark and all those guys, keep it in place and keep it rolling and improv on the fly as opposed to fully blowing it up. Because, I mean, hell, even Detroit, a team that has historically been a winning franchise, a team that has a lot of fan investment, a lot of pride, they've done their damnedest the last 6-7 years to get back to where they are right now. It hasn't worked out for them. It is a complete fucking crapshoot.
Yeah, and I've said to you before, we talk about it every time that Detroit is in Boston. I can't believe that like the quote unquote Iser plan netted them the guys that it did. And I don't mean that in like a good way. I mean like I thought they were gonna get like superstar level talent. And credit to Steve Eiserman, like they've done a good job of building a team. You know, DeBrincat's a huge ad for them. But elsewhere in the roster, it hasn't been like, oh man, they're building a powerhouse. It's like, okay, you got a bunch of scrappy second and third liners. That's cool, but what's that going to get you when push comes to shove and you need the high end talent, which I guess is kind of where we're going to with the Bruins right now. It's like you understand this is a you know, a bridge year, so to speak, or a you know, a cap hell year, right? We all agree on that, but it really emphasizes like how much you need those guys that were clicking in the first month of the season to click again. Because right now their dry spells, I think, are putting a lot of pressure on guys that already play with a lot of pressure. Be it your captain, you know, your first year captain who's trying to navigate how to be a captain, or your $11.25 million right winger who last night, by the way, attempted 12 shots. 12. Like he's trying to do it himself. And you understand why, but like they need some more support. So you got to hope that scoring comes, I think.
Absolutely. And was there anything else that kind of stuck out to you about that Sabres game? Whether you can write it off as a one off, or is it more or less the same things we've seen that have sprouted up? Whether it's the lapses defensively, not adhering to a strong forechecking game. Like what else kind of stood out to you about what led to such a flat performance against a very beatable team this year?
Yeah, I mean, another bad first period. I think that's been the calling card of this team this year is that they just get their teeth kicked in for 20 minutes and then they wake up, and that's great. But you have to not dig your hole too deep in those 20 minutes, and you have to eventually find your game. I don't think they found their game. They found their game when they had a 6-on-5 with 3 minutes left. They were down 2, though. It was over, you know? And so I think that, you know, these first periods, like you can think of probably 6 or 7 first periods off the top of your head that have been utterly garbage this year for the Bruins. So it remains an issue. I think that's the biggest issue is that, you know, we always heard about this with Cassidy, the on-time start, right? And Montgomery's borrowed it. All coaches say it now. But it's the biggest thing they're lacking right now. Like they do not have one of those anything resembling a consistent standpoint, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things where you're putting yourself in a bad spot anyway, because yes, you do have Pasternak and Marchand and like McAvoy when he's healthy, and you have like star level talent, but you also don't have what you had even a few years ago, or like let's say the Tampa Bay Lightning, who we agree are a super top heavy team, but if they start slow, but then they're pushing it in the third period, and they've got Kucherov and Stamkos and Point and Hedman, like they've got enough elite talent at the top, they can will themselves and outskill a team down the stretch and come away with 2 points or a point or something like that. Like they can absolve some of those slow starts based on how much high end talent. It's not nearly as easy for this team. You can't have it just be 1 or 2 guys every single night to bail you out. It's not like the Celtics with like Tatum or Brown, what have you, right? Like it's not a winning formula in hockey with the way this team is set up. So no, you're right, Ty. It's definitely something they do need to clear up moving forward.
What I would also say about that too is like we talk about, you know, how many goals they've given up with against an empty net this year. Well, you know, I'm not going to make excuses for them, but wouldn't you agree that that exact thing you're talking about plays to the strength of a Lightning, of a Maple Leafs, because they can just load up with their skill guys. The Bruins win games when they make the other team have to roll 4 lines or have to turn to like their depth guys, right? And so when your own depth guys aren't really carrying the load, that puts that strain on you, I think. So it's not cause for concern, but I think when they are built the way they are built, you got to have a strong start out of the gate. You got to be ready to go off the opening faceoff. You can't get outshot 21-5 in your own building against the Buffalo Sabres in the opening 20 minutes. That's insane. That can't happen.
Yeah, no, not a good response from the Bruins on Thursday night. But as we continue to kind of dissect that game, let's take a brief break here, Ty, and from our good friends over at FanDuel.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, Because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use and you can bet on everything from spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And frankly, that's the best part about FanDuel, that you can bet on anything. You want to bet on how many wins the Patriots are going to have this year? Be my guest. Maybe how many shutouts Jeremy Swayman's going to have this season? Go for it. You can really do it all. So bet now on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Once again, shout out to FanDuel and shout out to hopefully those who listen to the ad read and doesn't mention me shouting out Mac Jones again, because that has aged poorly. But anyway, I digress. Ty, as we look at more of the aftermath from that game against the Sabres, a long-term issue for this team, health of Charlie McAvoy. Based on what Jim Montgomery said on Friday after their practice, seems like the Bruins dodged a bullet, took a shot up high from, I think it was Petraglia, right?
Yeah.
So he drops to the ice, doesn't play for a majority of the third period. Sure looked like a concussion or something like that. Montgomery mentions that it's not anything head-related, just good for the Bruins. But when you look at the state of this D-core, where you're already missing a guy like Derek Forbort, who I think has been really steady all season long, can't afford to lose McAvoy for an extended stretch here, especially when offensively you need a guy like him on your blue line right now.
Yeah, he's part of the pillars, the untouchable pillars that you can't afford to lose for any prolonged stretch this year. Marchand is the other one. Pastrnak is obviously one. And a weird one that I include in there is Charlie Coyle, because I just think he just does so many things for you as a centerman. And so, yeah, you hold your breath every time this happens with him. He's taken some lumps this year, and he can dish them out, but he's been taking quite a few of them this year. So you hope for the best. You don't know, obviously, until he's back out there on the ice. But this did not look good in the moment. He looked like he was on Dream Street. When he was getting back up to his feet, I noticed it from 6 floors up. I'm like, ooh, that does not look good. And he tried to hang, but you just tell that he couldn't. When that happens, I do always wonder about the independent spotters. But, it seems like, they're going to escape this one unscathed. Once again, another Charlie McAvoy injury scare that's going to fall by the wayside, in a good way. But no, they can't lose him. They can't lose him. He's an ice shifting kind of presence out there. He's one of the only guys you have in the back end, in my opinion, who can lay the body. They lost that with Connor Clifton, and Kevin Shattenkirk doesn't really have that part of his game. And so he's just such a tone setter. You can't lose that guy. So he's got to be upright for them.
Yeah. When I think of the concussion spotters and the guys who pull guys off the ice, I remember I think it was 2018, 2019 when Marchand got pulled from a game, and afterwards, like, his entire press conference was him just roasting the guy, the spotter who took him off. He was like, yeah, he was eating like cheeseburgers up in the 9th floor. I remember that was like the angriest I think I've ever seen Marchand.
Oh, yeah.
In a post-game scrum in the regular season, at least. I know he's had some crispy press conferences in the playoffs, but
yeah, remember when he yelled at me and I was like 50 cents? Like, what did he say fuck me for?
Completely unnecessary. It was like a very fair, rational question that had nothing, I think, to do with him, right? I think it was like
about his line. It was about because they
really
had
out of line, Ty. Really
5.
being a great win, and you're just trying to dig and get the juicy sound bite, trying to really drag him through the dirt. Really unnecessary.
Those playoff ones suck too, because they pass you the microphone and then you ask your question and you pass the microphone off, because the exact question was, you guys had a great game. Bergeron, Marchand, Pastrnak. You had a great game. What did you see that made it a great game for you guys after kind of going through some struggles? And he said, it's funny how you decide what a good game is. And I was like, fuck me for? But I want to be like, all right, then why is it a bad game? Tell me why it's a bad game. But the microphone's already gone, and then now I'm a clown.
Jumping over all these stage chairs. He's trying to get past channel 7, channel 25 cameras, just going back up there.
I know, but it makes me feel like I'm in the White House. Like, sir, I don't need to do that. But I'll never understand why he did that. I'll never get it, but that's okay. It all worked out.
Yes, exactly. It happens, especially over a long emotional playoff run. Those things happen. I was like Oppenheimer in the testimony hearing, just like this, every time as he's going off. But
I was also
anyway,
naked.
Yes, it was. Yeah, we didn't talk about that. I didn't want to bring it up. This is a PG-13 podcast. I don't think we've said fuck a couple of times. I think you can only do that once per PG-13 movie, but it's okay. It's all right.
Breaking Bad gets one a season.
Exactly. So we get one per like 50 episode run. We'll do that. That's
right.
fair. So we definitely won't do it again next week. But with McAvoy's status and especially Fulbert now being put on LTIR. Mason Lohrei's back. I think we've talked about, the talent that he has, but also the areas of improvement he needs to really shore up here. What did you kind of see from him on Thursday against Buffalo? And did you see any potential strides in his individual game? I know 2 points is the most important thing, but how do you see him play, especially with a guy like Shattenkirk?
Yeah, I actually thought that they had some good chemistry, some good synergy. I thought they were springing one another well. I thought they were connected as a two-man unit in terms of the breakouts and how to best utilize each other's reach and their skill set and their veteran know-how in the case of Shattenkirk. So I thought that was an improvement. Defensively, I just think it's going to be a work in progress. It's going to be, it's going to be a full season before you're like, okay, he's grown into his body. He has man strength now. He's 6'5", but I swear to God, he's my weight. You know what I mean? Like you look at him, you're like, man, you are skinny, and that's the biggest thing for him. And it's going to come with time. But overall, I thought that the Shattenkirk Lohrei pairing was good for him. I'd like to keep him away from McAvoy if I can help it. I just think that it runs the risk of overexposure, which is not good for him. At this point in his career, he's not ready for that. So if you can hide him with a veteran and give him a soft landing and control the matchup a little bit more, I like that. And again, I thought he had a great pass in the second period, sparked the breakout, hit Johnny Beecher. Johnny Beecher then hit, I believe, Oscar Steen for a look that went just wide. But tremendous poise, patience to make that play happen. So overall, I liked it. But, it's hard to look at things in the micro with him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, because you have such high expectations and high hopes. And you got to see the defensive growth, I think, before you can really get a read on him. So I'm still kind of like, yeah, he knows what he can do, which is offense right now. It's everything else I got to see more of.
Yeah, he's a really fascinating prospect. And I mean, even just his profile, right, of an offensively gifted blue liner who's 6'5". I mean, that is something that doesn't come around often. So I think why Bruin fans are so excited when I remember his first game in the regular season where he was really dominant. And I think all of us were like, oh shit, is this guy ready? Because if this guy's ready to roll and can play 20 minutes and can do that, like, you've got an impact guy in your top four. So I get why Bruins fans are really excited, but yeah, it is interesting just to see how I think people should preach, patience with him, because there's going to be those lapses, right? It's not like it's every now and then. This is still a guy that I think Montgomery said it. He started playing defense when he was, I think, 16 or 17. Like, this is like Anthony Davis being like a 6'1" point guard, and then 1 year he grew like 7 inches. Like, there's a reason why that guy is such a freak athlete, both Lohrei and Anthony Davis, because their skill set doesn't really complement the frame that they're in. And it's not to say that Mason Lohrei is now going to lead the Lakers to an NBA title, or hopefully hopefully he's not getting hurt as Anthony Davis is. But when you look at just how intriguing of a prospect it is, yeah, I don't think there's going to be any sweeping declarations as to this season beyond just him building off of the promise. I think it's going to be a couple of years before he rounds into what I think the Bruins hope he can be.
Right. No, 100%. And I think, I think what I hate about it is, like, I just talk about him and I say, I don't think he's ready yet. And people turn this into some great sort of like knock on him. It's like, no, he's just not ready yet. Like, it takes time for guys to be ready. Jake DeBrusk had a whole year in the AHL before we saw him. You know what I mean? And like, I know different positions, of course, but like seasoning is not a bad thing. Seasoning is not a bad thing for a lot of these guys. And I think Lowry in particular, like I think a lot of people are watching with their heart, not their eyes. And your eyes and your brain will lead you farther when trying to analyze, a player that you want to be part of your future for, the next decade plus. It's great to have it now, but I'm thinking long term with him. That's why I said it's so hard to think about him and with the micro. Like I'm thinking long term. So for me, it's like, all right, like how can you maximize that? So I thought it was a good start. I do want to see him worked into the special teams more at the NHL level because I think that's the next step for him. Grzelcyk's not bad on the PK, but at some point over the next 10 games or whatever it is with Forbert out, you should have opportunity there to get Lowry some PK work and just see what he can do there, if he can do anything there, because he's going to have to play those roles. He's too big and too long not to, in his career, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think when you look at on-ice reps and we're looking at rookies, one guy who did not play on Thursday, Matt Poitras, which I think people were like, what is he injured? Is he banged up? Is it, what was the rationale there? Jim Montgomery more or less said, prescribed, day off, right? Like this was part of their plan. And I think on Friday, he even mentioned that they're kind of taking a page out of the book of what the Ducks are doing with Leo Carlsson, who's on like a Kawhi Leonard like rest schedule of like every couple of games he's not playing, as they try to get a guy who's still really, really young, really talented, up to speed with the pace and the strain that comes with an 82-game NHL season, which I get. Right, Matthew Poitras, 19 years old. There's been ups and downs, as I think we all expected. But I think we look at the Ducks, who are, again, they've taken some strides this year, but still a ways away from contending, ways away from, hinging on every single regular season game. It does feel like the Bruins are in a different spot where, again, yes, you don't want to overtax a guy like Poitras, but should he be a guy that necessarily is on a augmented schedule? When he's in the lineup, he can really impact the game night in and night out if he's on.
Yeah, I'm pro resting guys, and I say this because, well, Poitras never played more than 68 games in a season. That was in the OHL, where your recoveries are a little bit easier because you're a teenager playing against other teenagers. Now you're a teenager playing against adults, so your body's going to need more time to recover. It's going to hurt more, after games and after 3s and 4s and 4s and 6. And so, and I go back to 2008, 2009. The Bruins brought in Blake Wheeler, a great NCAA free agent, wanted to be with the Bruins and sign with Arizona, came to the Bruins. He was phenomenal for 40 games. He was unbelievable. And then he hit a wall. And then he was just not effective. And I'm pretty sure he was healthy scratch by the playoffs. Like, Poitras is too important to this team to have him hit that brick wall. So, yeah, I don't want him missing games against Toronto or Tampa or Florida. But, listen, it's Monday morning quarterbacking now because they lost the game. But you should be able to beat the Buffalo Sabres, who came to town losing 4 games in a row without Matthew Poitras. I think that was a calculated risk by the Bruins. It didn't work out. But I do agree with the overall assessment, the overall idea of, getting some rest, because I think Poitras is too important to hit that wall. That can't happen, right? And he's different than Lucic, right? Lucic, it was 6'4" and 220 as a 19-year-old. He was banging bodies right away. Like, that guy could play 80 games.
Right.
I think Poitras is different. He's 5'10". That feels generous to me, as someone who's stood next to him. 180 pounds. Again, that feels generous too. So, it's you got to manage this kid, I think, a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint when it comes to some of these rookies. So I do get it from that perspective.
Do you not agree with it though? It sounds like you are a Poitras every game guy.
I mean, I view it in terms of just the fact that when you look at just how important he is, I get having him in the lineup and having him learn on the fly of kind of the strenuous nature of the NHL and the schedule. But the way you map it out, I do kind of see that perspective of it, of the fact that you can't have him out there every single day playing 14, 15 minutes a night. It's almost like, all right, if there's situations where he's like that game against Toronto where he's pulled for most of the third period, then I'm like, All right. Well, I know you want to have him learn on the fly, but is he going to learn when he's just stapled to the bench? If it's every couple of games where he's sitting out just to keep him, his legs fresh and have him out there, I do get that part of it from the Bruins. It's just, as you said, I like to have Poitras out there as much as possible because I think he's such a key building block for this team, and I think he's still an impact player now when he's still generating offense for a team that is struggling with it. But as you said, yeah, you want to keep him out there and have him playing, but if you get to February and we're in a stretch where he's got 1 assist in his last 12 games, shit, like you're in that spot where, again, you don't have the depth of the personnel there where you can go and you can, have him navigate those ups and downs, those extended lulls. You just can't afford to have that. So no, I went in with the viewpoint that I think you need to play him as much as possible, but you kind of mapped out one of the worst case scenarios, but one that is also very, very tangible in terms of happening.
Yeah, but at the same time, to my own point, like, I mentioned this earlier, without him, it was a pretty flat looking team.
Yeah.
The bottom of the roster in terms of their creativity, the ability to turn nothing into something. So I do wonder if the Bruins hit that point as well. They're like, we can't sit this guy. He's too important to our middle six. We need his creativity. We need his spark, right? But this is when you come back to the cushion they've built to be in the playoffs, and you got to just keep racking up some points, even if they're loser points. Get a point here, get a point there, and you don't have to, be in desperation mode for the final 25 games of your season.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's definitely something worth monitoring with Poitras. We'll see how he does on Saturday afternoon against a red-hot Coyotes team, which I don't think most people expected, but see how he responds from that. Ty, before we go into our final segment, let's take one more break and hear from our other friends over at Factor Meals. Holiday season, you might be looking for nutritious, convenient meals to keep you energized on jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service, can help you fuel up fast for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle while tackling all your holiday to-dos. Too busy with holiday plans to cook, but want to make sure you're eating well? With Factor, skip the extra trip to the grocery store and the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up too, while still getting the flavor and nutritional quality you'll need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you need to do is heat and enjoy. This November, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door. Ready in just 2 minutes, no prep, no mess. So head to factormeals.com/poke50 and use code POKE50, that's POKE 50, to get 50% off. That's code POKE50 at factormeals.com/poke50 to get 50% off. Shout out to Factor Meals. Again, maybe we should give a few Factor Meals to Matt Poitras and Mason Lohrei. Bulk up a little bit, get ready for the strenuous 82-game season. But great meals, great product. Definitely go check them out. Factor Meals, Poke 50. Ty, I was thinking to end this episode, let's talk about a bit of a blast from the past. And this is in wake of Tuukka Rask making his anticipated return to the ice. Had people in an uproar. You had people wondering whether he was going to be an e-bug, whether he was stepping in with Jeremy Swayman out sick on Thursday. Just there for practice, taking over. Brendan Bussey gets called up, so it wasn't anything to do with it. And though some people lost their minds about the mere presence of Tuukka Rask walking those halls again, pissed some people off for some reason. Yeah.
Very, very weird people.
Guys just chilling. Also, dude literally works for the team, so he's around a lot of guys. Like, he's not been banished to the nether realm. He's either golfing or in like a luxury box most nights. And he's around. So,
and he lives here, I think, 11 months out of the year.
Yes, so he's around, guys. Hate to ruin your perception of Tuukka, but it had me thinking, though. People, I think, more rational Bruins fans excited to see him back on the ice. Who's like one Bruins legend from, let's say, since like 2000, over this like recent chapter that this team desperately needs right now in terms of that player's skill set, what they would bring in terms of like maybe their prime career. We're not talking about like an aging Tim Thomas or Rask or Bergeron, like prime level. What kind of player does this team need right now?
Yeah, part of me wants to say Tim Thomas just because he wouldn't hug any other goaltender. He'd be
That
like,
is true.
get the hell out of my way. I want to win the game.
He would skate. He would skate right past the hug. He would just book it right down to the tunnel.
I would have to say a guy that I think got snubbed. He got absolutely snubbed on the top 100. But it's the first guy that came to mind, right? Because I could say Bergeron, I could say Krejci, I could say Chara, but we've seen those guys. I want to go a little bit farther back. Brian Ralston shot the puck like 110 miles an hour. He was a penalty killing machine. And he was great. I loved Brian Ralston. If you can talk to me about one guy that I wish they didn't let walk during the 05-06 lockout or the 04-05 lockout, they left all their guys walk. Brian Ralston's that guy. He was great in Minnesota. He had a good run after that. But I got to go Brian Ralston. The two-way game, the absolute cannon of a slap shot. I liked him a lot. So I'm gonna go with him. It's just a deeper cut, I know, but I don't want to go cliche and say Bergeron. So I'm sure you're gonna pick Bergeron now because I'm the king of doing bad things like that. But no, I gotta go Brian Ralston. Perfect secondary scorer, what they would need.
No, I'm gonna go cliche. Unfortunately, Ty. I'm gonna do Greg Zanin, guy this team desperately needs.
Oh hell yeah!
Hell of a beard. No. I won't go with the cliche answer. If I did, I would probably say Chara, which every team could fucking use a guy like Chara.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to go with I'm looking more at defense and the guy that I think is rightfully, celebrated with how good he was. But this team needs a Dennis Seidenberg. I think any playoff team needs a guy like Dennis Seidenberg in terms of how many minutes he could log, how good he was on the PK, knew when to set the right tone with a hit or a really gritty shift out there. I mean, he's the guy that I think delivered that huge hit at the start of Game 7 against the Lightning, right? And maybe the best game ever. Knew when to pick his spots as to deliver energy to this team. Not the flashiest guy, but I think you look at what his skill set is and what he provided. Not just that run in 2011 where he just went sicko mode, but when you look at every team that goes on a deep playoff run, regardless of the roster, regardless of the makeup of the team, whether they're rush heavy, forecheck heavy, what have you. You need a guy like Seidenberg anchoring a key spot in your lineup. So I'm going to go with Seidenberg, a guy that maybe doesn't get as much credit as the usual suspects, but love him. Great player.
I mean, that's Alec Martinez, the last year for Vegas.
That's a good comparison.
It's the same kind of player. Block shots, can play both sides. Known more for his defense and his offense, but can chip in on occasion. Good Oppo top pairing kind of guy. Seidenberg was really good. And it's really interesting. Seidenberg was one of these guys that when he tore his ACL in 2014, he just wasn't the same. He just didn't have the same acceleration. Funny Dennis Seidenberg story. He played for the Carolina Hurricanes in 2008, 2009. He was a monster against the Bruins in that second round series. Actually, I think it's how he got on their radar. They're like, this guy is a nightmare to play against. Lucic got very sick of Dennis Seidenberg very quickly in that series. And the story goes, they're midway through the series, and Lucic says to him, hey, why don't you fight me? I'm kind of sick of this. Why don't you fight me? He goes, I'll beat your ass. Dennis Seidenberg goes, yeah, I know you will. I'm not fighting you. He was very aware of his limitations. He was like, I know. I'm not going to fight you. That's crazy. I'm not doing that.
So I will block 14 shots in a playoff game and be fine. But no, I will not get into a fisticuffs. Knew when to pick his battles.
Exactly.
Now, I'm glad we also didn't go with if we're looking at prime guys of I will take 27-year-old Jaromir Jagr. I'm glad we went with guys that aren't at the top of the list that no shit, everyone would love to have them. But in terms of the unheralded guys that we're not throwing out like a Sean Thornton or Greg Campbell or someone like that. Again, key guys for what their roles are. But in terms of another top four guy, another middle six guy that can put the puck on net like Ryan Ralston, as you said, guys that I think this team would desperately need, as would any team bracing for a deep playoff run. So that was our fun.
I totally slept on. Sorry, I totally slept on how good Brian Ralston was. Those 3 years in Minnesota after the lockout, 34 goals, 31 goals, 31 goals. Guy was a monster. Can't believe they let him walk. I can't believe they did that still to this day. So I will always be upset about that. So he's got to be my pick.
Yes, no, that was a good one. All right, well, I think that wraps up our extended episode of Poke the Bear. Ty, where can we read, listen, and get all of your work?
Well, listen, you can listen to me on this podcast. That's probably the best place to find me. Reading, you can find me on 95sportsub.com. I'm on their website, and I'm on Twitter /X at @_Ty Anderson.
Perfect. And you can read all of my stuff over at boston.com and follow me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it is, at Conor Ryan _93. So this was our latest episode of Poke the Bear. I'm Conor Ryan. That is Ty Anderson. You guys have a great rest of your week.